Well, we'll continue discussing the design and the role of instructional materials. And when we talk about, the design and the role of instructional materials for language curriculum, we need to know how we are adopting the textbooks and how we as language teachers can adapt the existing textbook. So before we proceed, I would just, for your information, so much of the information for this topic is coming from Nation and McAllister book, Language Curriculum Design, right? Adopting, why we adopt the textbooks. So as language planners, as language teachers, we need to know the textbooks is chosen because of various reasons. One of the reasons has been already prescribed by the Ministry of Education. So you have no choice, right? And well, once the textbook has been chosen or adopted, so adopting a course book could have its own usefulness. So one of the usefulness is it offers help to inexperienced or newly qualified teachers. So that sort of gives them some direction, what to teach and what content. So the content has already been there in the textbook. So it's a bit easy for the teachers to go into the classroom and teach it instead of, spending time to create their own materials. And if the textbooks are of high quality, they are created in a way keeping in view the contextual and the functional needs of the students, so they could be another source. And adopting a course books, that requires to address the needs or the wants of the learners, their lacks, their strengths and weaknesses. Well, adopting a course book involves various mechanisms. So one of them is, if for instance, if the teacher has already taught a few things and they want to cover more things for language teaching program. So if the activities are not there, so the teacher could adapt it. So if for example the existing textbook doesn't fit for the age, doesn't fit for the gender or the social or the cultural needs of the students, and if it doesn't fit for the time, so the teacher might think of adapting it or bringing in some changes, right? And if for instance a textbook contains some material which learners might find unsuitable, or which the teacher might find unsuitable, or might not be matchable to the beliefs about language teaching, so they might think of adapting it, right? And if for instance the existing textbook doesn't include exercises or lessons or topics which a teacher think or the institute think are needed to develop the skills or ideas or critical thinking of the language learners, so the teacher might decide about adapting or changing it. And if a textbook, for example, doesn't have the application of the principles held by the teachers themselves, so they might think of adapting it. So adaptation is actually quite a dynamic process. So for that matter, the language teachers need to have required skills and specialized expertise. I could give my own example. For example, while I was teaching a language course in a university, composition and writing, so I was given a textbook to teach composition and writing, but I found the textbook bit of higher level to my students at for my students of BS level. So what I did, I just because all this, there were some other classes in the university, and they were all going to be assessed on the same criteria. But in order to assist my students to get more out of this book, what I did, I adapted it. For example, in order to teach them the lesson about comparison and contrast devices for effective language writing, so I brought in some material which was easy and which was simple and which was understandable by my students. So this is how, I mean, the constraint was, I mean, the textbook prescribed was of much higher level, and I had the liberty. And later on, I just encouraged my students to read the textbook, and so they could meet the assessment standards as well. So in brief, adapting a course book is not an easy task. For this reason, the teachers need to be well equipped, and they need to have necessary skills and expertise.